Here's the first question. How do you address...
Nobody can hear you, I don't think.
Yeah, I know. No,
Oh.
they can't. All right. How do you address teacher culture of needing to control the pace and outcomes?
Do you want to start or you want me to start? How do you address teacher culture and the need to
Control the pace and
Control.
outcomes.
If you want, I
Go
can
for it.
begin with that, because one of the needs to control really has to do with the fear of the assessment and evaluation on the part of the system to the teacher. They feel like they've got to control things because they are linked to the data and the assessment of that student and the success of that student. And if they don't control it, they think that the student will fail. So what I think what we need to do is to empower the system, if you would, to allow the teacher more innovation space, and then be able to present models that gives the teacher some tools to be able to more strategically teach, present them different options, create a different culture in which innovation is acceptable, in which, and I believe, again, personalized learning becomes more appropriate. And once they become aware and exposed and experienced in that kind of a space, it just catches on like fire because they never want to go back to the control issue.
And I think what I would add to that is, having robust professional development. In our schools, we have an academic dean who's working with teachers, literally every single day. Their only job is professional development of teachers. And, in a traditional model, a teacher may see his or her principal once or twice a year, a couple times during assessment time. And, again, just engaging, assessing data all the time, figuring out the best way to reach your students and, creating a framework and a structure around which to support teachers. I think allows them to continue to innovate and continue to reach students in a meaningful way.
Okay. How long does it take to build a model like this?
I mean, our model is different today than it was, last week or last year or when we started in 2006. Like the Learning Lab as it exists now was not the same as it was in 2006, and I don't anticipate it looks the same. So it's a continual process. We're refining. I think anybody, the nuts and bolts of kind of our pillars or the work that, Carpe Diem believes is possible for students it's not very complicated. We're buying, online learning programs off the shelf. We're hiring great teachers. We're implementing against a strategy. It's going to look different, year over year, but it's, no pun intended, it's really not rocket science. I mean,
I agree.
Since some students are at a significantly higher level of learning, which is beyond their social and emotional maturity level, where do you guide our 14-year-old high school graduates? Do we really throw them into a university setting or guide them somewhere else?
We don't have 14-year-olds.
Well, yeah, right. First of all, I don't think that learning is limited to an age. That a 14-year-old, I don't think it's ever inappropriate for them or to where social emotional stuff comes in when it comes to academic learning. Where it comes in more is in the socialization, and also I think in their maturity to be able to embrace a different atmosphere of adults and things like in a college setting. Now, for those, while we have not had 14-year-olds go on to college or everything, our desire is not to speed kids up, but to release them to be able to proceed at a more rapid pace if they can, but also could go deeper. So the 14-year-old who has the capacity to complete high school doesn't mean that they should. And you begin to link them into more depth, which gives them more, if you would, maturing time. But then you also link them up into career, CTE, kind of vocational kinds of things, which we do at the upper end, to where they become more experiential in their learning by going out and if they want to be a veterinarian, become a veterinarian, actually work in apprenticeship and things like that. So I think those are kinds of things, but they can also begin to earn credit for college, which they do in our situation, while they're in our physical setting. So there's another part of it where they don't have to, if they can graduate high school and they are ready for college, which some of our kids are, they do it right in our building, under our teacher and supervision and everything. So the socio-emotional thing doesn't really play in if you do it within that kind of a setting.
Okay, so continuing with you then, Rick, what is the parent engagement model for Carpe Diem?
Well, it's interesting because having a K-12 system, I've got experience with parent involvement at both levels. And the elementary parents are very involved, overly involved sometimes, if you feel like at times, but you really welcome that. When you get into the middle school, high school, I think it is not just unique to us, but into many models, is that parent engagement begins to wane. The single parent issues, the triple jobs, trying to raise their families, the time becomes a challenge for those parents. And so, and we've had teachers that have said, but we need more parent involvement. We need to get these parents involved. And my comment is that we need to really focus on what we can control, not what we can't. When you get into the middle school and high school, the empowerment really needs to transfer from the parent to the student. So that's what we're trying to do, is empower and engage the student, because if the student will become engaged, as we have proved, regardless of the dysfunctional home in which they live, they can still become extremely successful. While welcome, parental support is not critical in every situation. It is totally welcome, though, and solicited. It does help. But we can still be successful even if the parent cannot give it.
How do we take these models from a local level to a state level?
Yeah, for Rocket Ship, certainly the work that we're engaged in, with our model and our parent engagement strategy, I think works best in the urban communities, just by nature of our scalability and our ability to support our schools. So I think for us, an opportunity in Boise is something that might have potential. The rural question is a big one, certainly in Idaho. I think Rick certainly has some ideas about what that might look like with his model. I think there are a lot of models that lean on the ability to use online learning, kind of real-time interaction, Khan Academy, Carpe Diem, that are a true solution to reaching the entire state.
I think you've got to set up a policy level that begins to really look at the philosophy of learning within any given state. And when you begin to really change and redesign the system more towards personalized learning, and you create policies that will stimulate that and incentivize that, then you've got a culture that's ready for it to go statewide. Then it's a matter of really looking at an implementation strategy. Okay, we want to do personalized learning. It may look differently in different places, as it should, with different people, different cultures, different things like that. But empowering them with the tools and the resources, the professional development, and then catching a vision for that area, I think is how. But it starts at the policy level.
What is it going to take to raise Idaho K-12 from 49th in the nation to at least midpoint or better?
I mean, a lot of hard work, and I think kind of riding the coattails of Rick's last answer. I mean, at the policy level, I mean, I think the policy environment needs to be right for existing high-performing schools to do what they do best, for out-of-state high-performing schools to come in and be a part of the solution, and ultimately, the existing system is not best suited to the 21st century or how students learn and are going to continue to learn, and so. Structurally, from a framework perspective, I think there needs to be some significant breaking down of what currently exists, and innovation infused in order to really impact what's going to happen. And Idaho has, not only the unique situation of kind of rural, kind of access, but also just being a little bit off the radar and a little bit off the map, and so kind of intentional focus to make sure it's kind of brought into focus is going to be huge.
I think in addition to that, which I think is spot on, that if you were to take the strengths of Idaho, which right now they have a strong CTE program, and you were to combine that with a philosophy of personalized learning, I think you're creating a climate and an atmosphere for kids to be successful in a way that they'd never seen it before. I know that the ranking is important, but it's not really about a number. It's about the success of students, and I'm sure that's what that question represents. Students are going to be successful when they're engaged and when they see value and purpose in what they're learning. And right now, a lot of the facts that we give the kids to learn are irrelevant. Like I use the example of quadratic equations. And I've never used one as an adult. Why do I need to know that as a high school student? And if we begin to reframe and rethink of what they need to really learn and begin to assess the proper outputs, with the inputs necessary for 21st century skills and living and being equipped for life, then I think you begin to change the entire climate and you'll be more successful with the kids.
You may or may not be able to answer this question, but I'll ask. What state legislation is needed to allow Idaho schools the flexibility to replicate the systems and results you have implemented?
So without knowing the significant details of what the current barriers are, I mean, certainly the ability to be flexible around seat time minutes and online learning, the ability for, teachers to, phenomenal people to lead students, not necessarily credentialed, math teachers to only teach math only in elementary school, so flexibility around, what it means to educate. And certainly for out-of-state operators, the ability for models to be implemented, from afar, not necessarily Idaho born and bred. And you've seen bits and pieces of this in other states across the country, and the ability to create an environment and atmosphere where out-of-state operators can come in and be really successful on a national scale is going to be very important.
Agreed.
Okay, Rocket Ship, explain your parent volunteer program piece. How is it organized? Who keeps track of the hours? What do you do when parents don't volunteer?
So, the volunteer hours they're a family commitment, not necessarily a parent commitment. So first and foremost, and I think this is an important point because it means that an older sibling can go on a field trip. It means that a parent can come in and do Xerox copies. It means that a parent can take home homework and grade it. Excuse me. It doesn't have to be in the school. It doesn't just have to be the parent. It's a family commitment to be, a part of what's going on. The office manager, who is kind of the face of the school, works with parents and tracks it. And we've got a couple of, cubicles for parents in our front office where they track their hours. And, there are no repercussions. There's no way to require or mandate a parent to volunteer. But again, staying engaged, finding opportunities and ways for parents who may not have the opportunity to do 30 hours across the year in the school, but other ways to help. I mean, inherently, the parents want to help. So I think finding a way to meet them at their level, given the life requirements or situation they're in, is key. And it's meeting them where they are, and it's a two-way street. It's not do your 30 hours or else. It's, we're gonna work with you to make sure that you can contribute to the school in the same way we're contributing to your family.
Okay. How do you manage the heavy? Oh, let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much the same question. What do you think is the greatest lesson you have learned about? I'm thinking it's about the model that you're involved in. What do you think is the greatest lessons?
So I think that one of the greatest lessons or perhaps challenges for us is, phenomenal leaders are few and far between, and so finding amazing principals, having a bench of assistant principals and academic deans and leaders who can continue to grow into being leaders and start new schools, for us is something that not just Rocket Ship, I anticipate Carpe Diem and other high performers, are going to continue to struggle with. I think the talent gap across our country is significant and is ultimately, if we don't solve that pretty soon, we're not going to make up much ground in the next 10 years.
I think that the greatest surprise that I had was being confirmed that kids rise to the level of your expectations. And you set high standards and give them a reason to do that, empower them with tools to be able to rise and to achieve, they will. And to me, that was a delightful surprise because I wasn't quite certain if they could live up to that kind of a thing. I knew that kids could achieve more, but some of them are just hitting it out of the park. And we need to build systems that can reward that and encourage that. And when you have special ed students and you have 10th and 11th grade students reporting at pre-K literacy, and yet within a half a year they can advance to 6th grade and their whole self-esteem begins to pick up and they begin to walk confidently through the school and begin to socialize and become a peer mentor to other special needs students. That's outstanding because somebody cared enough to reach them where they were and help them to rise. So I think that rising to the level of your expectations is a key thing that really was great for me to learn.
Great. So there's often criticism about the cream of the crop going to charter schools. So address that, both of you, especially when it has to do with special ed.
Yes, we creamed a 25% special ed population in Indianapolis. If that's what we're doing, creaming, we're doing a very poor job. Now, it is not like that at all for us. In fact, we tend to attract a lot of the students that have not been successful in other venues. and so they come in and they're already kind of frustrated and defeated and everything, and we can build them and empower them and do that. So the data doesn't support the myth of creaming in our school, and I'm absolutely positive in most charter schools.
I think the only thing I would add is, the reality is, both of our schools are open enrollment, public, free, options and opportunities for families. And everybody applies. It's first come, first serve. If we have too many students, which both of our schools often do, it's a random lottery. We literally have no, kind of control over who ultimately gets into our school. Certainly there are recruiting methods for us, but if you look at our demographics, I think you'd be hard pressed to see that we're trying to find students who are higher performers or more motivated. I think we believe that's our school model that turns those students into that.
So speak to the issue of labeling children with that special ed label.
Well, it has been our experience that a lot of students that come with a special ed label truly are only really lacking in knowledge rather than in processing capabilities. The typical model for determining learning disability is called a discrepancy model, in that they should know X, but they only know Y, and so that gap, whatever that is means that they can't learn, or there's a learning disability. We disagree. We think that we need to, again, do away with the label, understand what it means, but then approach the student where they are. And we have found that as we begin to do that, in even special ed population kids with learning disabilities, we close the gap of information, we build the skills, and then we exit them out of the program, and they become, if you would, in the general population. And so, there are other students who who truly do have disabilities, that can function well in an independent learning environment, but they're still progressing at a higher rate than they would in other settings, because they're approached again on a one-on-one level. So our experience is that approach them at an instructional level regardless of label, have those high expectations, see what happens.
I have nothing to add. Well done, Rick.
Rick, I run a school that is very similar in design to yours. I'm curious what the success rate has been for your students and staff as we are going to expand in the school year 13-14.
Success rate over 5 years, we've had a 90% proficiency average in reading and math for the students in state assessments. With over 30% of those are exceeding state standards. So when it comes to actual proficiency and being able to pass the test and everything, they're doing quite well. What's more important to us is really to find out, not just equip them to graduate or pass a state test, but are they ready for life after that? And so that's where I think it's important to go beyond the proficiency of academics and begin to equip them with the skills necessary, which includes some CTE components, career technical education components, internships, and things like that. And I think that also inspires more proficiency, because the kids see a purpose before they have to take that assessment. And then it also equips them for afterwards, which is the better, I think, determinant. How successful are they after they graduate?
Do you experience any issues with age-appropriate curriculum?
Not sure what that means, but no, because what is age-appropriate curriculum? What does that mean? The greatest problem we might have at times is when you have a 10th grader who has pre-K literacy, and a lot of stuff out on the market is meant for pre-K. Yeah? So how do you get that 10th grader to really look at pre-K? It takes that we have a challenge with. But when it comes into 6-12 and even looking for age-appropriate K-5, if you have K-5 students, there's a lot out there. Is it what we want? Is it ideal? Is it the best ever? No. There's a lot of improvement that needs to be made. But with the tools that we've got, the curriculum that is available out there, you can do a lot.
Well, we really don't. I mean, if anything, and this is not really material, when you're a 5th grader, it's not necessarily cool to be, doing an online learning program with, butterflies and frogs, which maybe which kind of, just echoing what Rick says. But I mean, it's not that it's age inappropriate. It's just when students are well behind and you have to kind of scale back with some of the online learning, there, maybe challenges there.
How do you recruit your teachers?
We have a strong partnership with Teach for America. A significant number of our staff are Teach for America core members or alumni, and then otherwise we're looking nationwide to recruit the best and brightest who are focused on ed reform, want to be leaders, and are engaged and aligned with our model.
Teach for America, New Teacher Project, and also word of mouth and relationships.
Okay. Why the digital learning time separate from interactivity?
For us, we're giving a time for the students themselves to be empowered. And so there's a time to be independent and do independent learning to where they're not really dependent upon other people telling them what to do. Again, it helps them to make decisions. It helps them to manage their time. And then it also helps them to be able to move at a pace that's appropriate for them. When you get in a collaborative environment, there's peer pressure, there's all kinds of other elements that factor in that may or may not be the best for the student. We need them to have freedom from any kind of peer pressure or even being ashamed that they don't know something, and have that time to really take charge of their own learning and empowered to do so, and then to become successful themselves rather than, oh, I'm a part of a group. There's a time for that, and we build that in, but there's a time to just do it yourself.
You guys are rock stars.